In at number 5 we have Palmer House Hotel. This hotel is not only considered the most haunted place in Minnesota, but to some it's considered the most haunted place in America. Located in Sauk Center, the hotel has been visited by paranormal activity investigators from across the country. Recently, the ghost hunter from the Travel Channel, Ghost Adventures, even investigated the hotel. A brothel that went by the name of the Sauk Center House occupied the current grounds of the Palmer Hotel, but the Sauk Center House burned down in 1900, and the Palmer was built in its place the following year. The Palmer Hotel was established in 1901 and is notorious for its permanent ghost residence. The most reported ghost in the hotel is named Lucy, who resides in room 17. Legend has it that Lucy was an adult worker that frequented the past building of the Sauk Center House. Though Lucy endured a terrible accident of losing her life at the hands of one of her clients. Even though this happened in the building, the Palmer Hotel can't seem to get rid of the spirit of Lucy. The ghost of Lucy is said to dislike men by slamming the room door of male guests. Some reports her slamming the room door so hard it rattles the artwork on the wall and aggressively drops the temperature. During a recent investigation, a Chicago ghost hunting outfit allegedly recorded a temperature of -1 degrees Fahrenheit during their stay. Additionally, there was a couple staying at the hotel that reported a horrifying ghost encounter in room 17, where the wife woke up in the night and suddenly saw a lanky man dressed in 1920s clothing standing at the foot of the bed. Other active areas include the bar in room 22, home to a spirit named Raymond, rumored to be Lucy's manager. One employee of the Palmer House Hotel has confessed that their favorite paranormal experience is when guests complain about how noisy the people above them are, even though they are on the top floor. The ghost encounters and paranormal activity is so frequent at the Palmer Hotel that the current owner, Kelly Freezer, didn't believe in ghosts, but this changed when she became the owner of the hotel. In at number 4 we have the Soap Factory. The Soap Factory was at its peak during the soap boom of the 1880s, though now the factory has been left abandoned. The Soap Factory is one of the oldest factories in Minneapolis. While the process of making soap required lots of fats, lie in extremely hot temperatures, therefore it wasn't the most glorious or safest workplace in its day. Furthermore, the fats came from animal carcasses, thousands of them. The flow of blood and skin leaked into the Great River next door in the turn of the century. The building's smell of flesh made it a hot spot for stray dogs that the city paid to be rounded up and sent to the end of their life. If that's not creepy enough, there are legends regarding malpractice taking place at the factory, with animal fats from local restaurants taken to be made into soap. And there were also rumors of child labor at the factory, but whatever you choose to believe, there is no denying that the site contains negative energy. Now the basement of the abandoned factory is used for haunted tours. The tour is so scary in fact that guests have to sign a waiver and have to be 18 to go on the tour. In at number 3 we have First Avenue. Located in downtown Minneapolis, the building, which is now home to this nightclub, has a rounded front, is painted black, and has white stars on its sidewalls with the names of many of the musical talents who have done shows in one of these 3 event rooms found inside. Before it was famous for being a nightclub, the First Avenue was a Greyhound depot. The First Avenue legend has to do with the building's former self, the Great Art Deco Greyhound Bus Center that opened on 7th Street in 1937. The story goes that a young woman went to the station to meet her boyfriend who was returning home from World War II. When she was informed that he had died in combat, she ran into the restroom and ended her life due to heartbreak. In recent years, multiple First Avenue staffers have reported seeing a ghost in the washroom. The ghost has been reportedly described as a woman always in a green army jacket and sometimes seen dancing at the club along with other ghosts. Legend says that many homeless people died in the bus station as well, and they can be seen dancing with the women. There have been reports of another spirit haunting the nightclub. The staffers nicknamed this spirit Slippy, while this particular ghost is said to make a balloon appear from nowhere which then floats up and down the staircase on its own. Dave Schrader, paranormal investigator, visited First Avenue to assess the paranormal activity in the building multiple times and has concluded that the building is indeed haunted by many spirits, indicating that the record room is the most active area of the site. While DJs that have played at the venue have reported frequently hearing strange noises through their headphones, such as growls, voices and screams, other performers report their equipment being pushed off stage with no explanation. In at number 2 we have Schmidt Brewery. Schmidt Brewery became the largest in Minnesota by 1860, producing 1,200 barrels annually and shipping them as far south as Tennessee. It was restructured as the St. Paul Brewing Company in 1898 before being sold to Jacob Schmidt soon after in 1900. Since its opening in 1884, many ghost hunters have visited the Schmidt Brewery to experience some of the many rumored paranormal activities. The brewery has been the site of many constant unexplainable instances, from fires to people losing their lives to terrible accidents. This place has seen a lot of scary sights. While the victims of these events linger around to haunt the grounds of the brewery, Even though the building is now used as an artist's loft, that doesn't take away the scary history of the Schmidt Brewery. While most of the ghosts that haunt the grounds of the old brewery have to do with ordinary brewery workers dying in terrible accidents, in 1896 2 workers lost their lives in an explosion. Furthermore, in 1902 a worker fell down an unmarked elevator shaft. Additionally, in 1904 Matthew Kohler, a worker whose job was to light gas lamps in the brewery, lost his life from inhaling flames. Schmidt Brewery has been a St. Paul haunt since 1855 for more than a couple of reasons, when owner Jacob Schmidt took down the original North Star Brewery sign, replacing it with his namesake, Jacob Schmidt Brewing Company. The entire brewery burned down a year later in 1900. Plenty of other bad luck would also follow on the grounds of the brewery, suspected due to the tragic death of many workers of the brewery. And finally, in at number 1 we have Four Pals Restaurant. Known as the most haunted restaurant in Minnesota, the Four Pal has a tragic story. Located in St. Paul, Four Pals was a high-end restaurant located in Irvin Park, and the restaurant is a beautiful Victorian mansion. Sadly though, the restaurant is now permanently closed. The dark stories about Four Pals Restaurant hint that the historic mansion is seriously haunted. As the story goes, back in the late 1800s, Joseph Four Pal had an affair with the mansion's maid, Molly. It was not long before his wife discovered this relationship and love for Mary. Therefore, the wife became extremely jealous of the servant and assigned Molly to do chores that would keep her away from the bedrooms and away from Joseph. Molly became pregnant and Joseph ended the affair, but Molly was so distraught about the whole situation that she ended her life. According to reports, she ended her life in the attic. Joseph was upset when he heard the news about Molly that he figured he could not stay in the house where his beloved died. One day he went out for a walk and ended his life as well. Since then, restaurant guests and employees have reported creepy sightings of a woman dressed in 1800s attire, lights turning off and on by themselves, and strange noises coming from the attic. In one case, the disturbances were so chaotic that led to an investigation by the St. Paul police, whose canine dog refused to enter the attic. It is said that Joseph and Molly both haunt Four Pals, but many guests have said Molly is more active spirit. People say they have seen the two walking around the dining area, but Molly bangs on walls and smashes glasses. Some people say they can smell her lavender perfume. That being said, Mr. Four Pal is also sometimes seen, and his ghost has been reported wearing a dark waistcoat, silk vest, pinstripe trousers, and a derby hat. He can be seen going to the basement, at which time the lights flicker and shuffling noises are heard. He roams the house and has been caught on film many times. The former staff of the restaurant have also reported on many occasions when they would go floor by floor turning off lights as they close down for the night. Then when the staff members get in their cars to leave, they'll notice the top floor light is on. Nevertheless, if the restaurant is haunted, the story of Mr. Four Pal and Molly is one of the most devastating to date.
Kicking off the list at number 5, the Landmark Inn. Located in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, right around Lake Superior, you'll find the Landmark Inn. Yeah, nice and cute and cozy. Come on in, take your coat off, stay a while. This fancy hotel was originally built in 1930 as a luxury accommodation for wealthy business owners from all around the United States. Sounds like a good time. Let's gather, let's talk shop around candles. These business owners would visit the Landmark to check on their business interests, all that good stuff. Though for its 100 years being open to guests, the hotel has had multiple reports of, you guessed it, ghosts and paranormal activity. It's so common at the Landmark Inn that the ghost hunters and paranormal investigators, they make trips out to the hotel quite often just to check in and be like, hey, how's it going? And they put on their gadgets and they just check in on them. They can rely on them. The hotel's 6th floor is home to one of the saddest stories the hotel has ever seen. This story takes place in the 1930s when the hotel was a new, lively social and cultural center in town. The story revolves around a ship worker who fell in love with a local librarian and conducted their love affair in the Lilac Room. Yeah, of all places, of course, let's go meet the Lilac Room. Sounds beautiful. And that was where the man was staying. Perfect place to meet. The couple was said to have a planned wedding upon his return from the last voyage on the sometimes treacherous Lake Superior. Unfortunately, their love affair ended in tragedy when his ship met with a storm and sank to the bottom of a lake. He never returned to the shore, and the librarian mourned the man in said Lilac Room, eventually dying herself of a broken heart. The heartbreaking story comes with many reports of the Lilac Room now being haunted. Yeah, rightfully so. As a large number of guests has reported hearing cries and whispers from a female. The female is also seen by many guests and workers on the 6th floor near the Lilac Room, crying and mourning for her loved one. A less romantic story that is associated with the hotel goes back to when it was even finished being built. During construction, a man ended the life of his girlfriend due to anger and jealousy, and this took place right after she told him about her past boyfriends and their relationship history, just normal stuff that he flipped out on, just a monster. And since the hotel was still being built, to conceal the evidence, the man buried her in the unfinished basement. Just horrible stuff. You knew I was going there and you're like, ah, please don't. To this day, decades later, visitors and employees report hearing cries from that basement, and some report hearing whispers from a female voice asking for them to find her body. I just got goosebumps. That's real goosebumps. No matter how much time goes by, these two women, heartbroken for different reasons, still haunt said hotel today. Number 4, Michigan Bell Telephone Building. The Bell Telephone Building can be found in downtown Grand Rapids. It's known from the legend that the building is haunted by 2 ghosts. It's always 2, eh? Always gotta have pairs. Good things come in pairs. Even demons. These spirits have consistently caused chaos throughout the buildings for years in their own unique personal way. We love it. We love a unique ghost. The spirits that haunt the Bell Building are rumored to be Warren and Virginia Randall, a couple who used to reside in the Grand Rapids. Back in 1907, they moved from Detroit and bought the Judd White Mansion in Grand Rapids, which has now been torn down and built into what we now know as the Bell Telephone Building. So a lot of history there already. Over the years of living in this new house, Warren and Virginia's relationship started to crumble as Warren became very strange and paranoid almost, creating hardships in their relationship. In 1908, Virginia became tired of Warren's strange and aggressive behavior, so she decided, I'm out of here, peace. She left him. One night, 3 years after they were separated, Warren convinced Virginia into taking a car ride with them, hoping to get back together, maybe talk it out. The two of them ended up at the Judd White House, where their verbal disagreement turned horrible, and Warren sadly took the life of Virginia. Then he proceeded to end his own life in the very same moment. The tragic accident that happened in the Judd White House became public knowledge, and the house was left empty with no one wanting to occupy it. Yeah, more than fair. I'm like, what's rent? Also, what happened? No. The house remained abandoned for 10 years after the accident until they finally just decided to tear the thing down completely. Thus, in 1924, they built the Bell Telephone Building on the ground, which still is in operation today. Yeah, they didn't tear that one down. That one's still going strong. Due to the horrifying scenes that happened on the grounds of the Bell Building, many claim that the spirits of Randall and Virginia still remain, haunting the new building. Some say that ghosts move into the new building and remain there to this day. I mean, I think that's possible. Ghosts like to move. They can go through walls. They can probably relocate. Through the years of operation in the office building, visitors and employees all report being harassed by strange late-night calls, which have been traced back to be coming from inside of the building itself. Yeah, inside the house. You guessed it. It's upstairs. That's so scary. Due to this and the strange, eerie feelings that the employees feel while they're even working, it's safe to say Randall and Virginia may remain on the grounds. Most likely. They're definitely there. It sounds like they're there. They're for sure there. Number 3, the Henderson Castle. Established in 1895, this castle is a hub for many spirits and paranormal activity. I mean, it's a castle. The original owners, Frank and Mary Henderson, are said to haunt the castle as they passed away back in 1899. Yeah, I wouldn't want to leave either, living or dead. Additionally, other spirits are said to reside in the castle, a young girl and a dog. Yeah, a dog! We've got a dog ghost. How do you deal with that? Ghost Barques? That'd be so scary. In 2005, the castle was occupied by Peter Livingstone McNellis and his family. When the family resided in the castle, Livingstone's son, Vincent, before anyone else had ever reported anything strange happening in the house, he said that he saw an apparition of a figure in the Victorian room, originally the changing room for one Mary Henderson. The son said while pointing at a picture of a woman dressed in an old period clothing, some Victorian clothing, that was the woman he saw wearing that same clothing. I would throw up. If someone ever said that, I'd be like, oh, this Victorian painting? And one former innkeeper who stayed at the castle each night told Livingstone on numerous occasions that she also felt a presence coming up and down the staircase, a movement passing her on the stairs when she would walk by. Ugh, these are scary. Top 5 is like, or top 10 is scary fish. This is hard. This is some scary stuff. 9 a.m. I'm already getting spooked. While now the castle is being used for a bed and breakfast, guests have fallen victim to ghosts as well. Yeah, it's not over yet. The Henderson Castle is a very paranormal active ground that many ghost hunters have investigated, and they've confirmed, in fact, that it's haunted by spirits. I trust them. The people that can go into these castles and physically do this, I'm like, yep, I trust your opinion, whatever. He just comes out, he's like, haunted. We're like, thanks, Daryl. This has been confirmed as these ghosts have interacted with many paranormal investigator teams, in addition to guests and employees of the castle. Yeah, they're just harassing everyone. The ghosts seem to be friendly, not evil whatsoever, so that's a good side, I guess, to being haunted by ghosts. They have been known to speak and physically touch guests and employees. Just they touch them on their back, side, shoulder, always in the back. You never see it coming. It's always in this region. Not only that, but there's also been reports of radios making weird noises or turning on by themselves, even though they're either unplugged or just either turned off. Both bad, both scary. Guests and employees have also reported hearing footsteps upstairs, slamming doors from unexplainable sources, and some ghosts have been wearing the clothes that they wore while they were alive. Clothes that they wore while they died in, probably. As the spirit of Mary Henderson has been reported as many guests at the top of the staircase, wearing her usual getup. Imagine being like a clown, like a jester, and then you die in that, and that's what you look like as a ghost. You're like, what? I was doing a mascot gig. I don't want to look like a shark forever. Number 2, Allegan Hodge. The old Allegan Elk Lodge was built in 1909 and was used as a psychiatric and TB hospital until its closure in 1948. The lodge was a former hospital that was frequented by mobster Al Capone, and one that many say is haunted by at least 7 different ghosts. Yeah, you thought 2 was bad. Add 5 more. Now we got 7 ghosts. And it's currently on the auction block in Allegan. If you have a lot of money and bravery, there you go. Well, the structure was originally built by physician John Robinson in 1909. Somewhere in the 1920s, it was sold to a doctor from the Chicago area who had allegedly had underworld ties. That's a great doctor. You got just who you want working on your pancreas. Brought pancreas back today. The facility was supposedly frequented by mafia figures such as Al Capone, the Prohibition-era Chicago mob boss, and his men. Yeah, well, they needed medical attention or when they simply needed to get away from Chicago, this is where they'd go. The old Elks Lodge, Al Capone. He's like, oh, it's cozy. They have great soup. Years later, it was used as an Eagles Lodge and an Elks Lodge. And in 2010, it was acquired by an Allegan woman who began renovating the property, but now she wants to sell it. Yeah, can't imagine why. Because one of the former doctors who owns the lodge had underworld ties, maybe? Something like that? I don't know. It led to a lot of people believing that there's a lot of undercover stuff about this lodge. It's still happening to this day. I don't know why I'm doing this like it's like over there, but I'm like, there's something going on in that lodge, especially as it's known to hold 7 different paranormal entities, like I mentioned previously. For many years, employees and visitors have told stories of spirits who relentlessly roam the building. Some of the paranormal activity that has been experienced here includes cabinets opening up by themselves in the kitchen, sounds of children laughing, it's always calming in the morning, photographic anomalies captured throughout the building, and like you name it, shadowy figures in the basement, all bad. Notably where the morgue was located, the basement, good stuff, a lot of stuff happening in there. They'd be knocking on the front door, indiscernible conversations, and ringing at the doorbell when no one was present. Yeah, good stuff. Again, I have goosebumps, they're back. Guests also heard footsteps and the sound of hospital activity long after being used as one. They'd also see full-bodied apparitions of children. They would just see ghost children. That would be it. I wouldn't have to see any more. I would just see the ghost children and be like, again, see ya. Like that's. And finally, number 1, Pointe Barques Lighthouse. There are plenty of lighthouses in Michigan, and plenty of them are rumored to be haunted, of course, because they're lighthouses and they're creepy, as they normally are. And this one is no exception. Built in 1847, real old, a lot of history with this one. The lighthouse is located on Pointe Barques. As the legend goes, early to mid 1800s, Peter Shook had been Pointe Barques' first lighthouse keeper. He was the OG. In 1849, Peter drowned while he and a couple of friends were sailing to Port Huron to pick up supplies for the lighthouse. He left behind 8 kids and his wife, Catherine, and she took over at that point for Peter's duties, thus becoming Michigan's first female lighthouse keeper. Since then, people have claimed to see the spirit of Catherine walking along the edge of a cliff, dressed in mourning clothes, as she is still heartbroken by the loss of her lover, of course. As we talked about earlier, ghosts like to wear the things that they were, that they passed away in. Again, would hate to be a clown outfit, that would suck. She had also been spotted in the window of the 2nd floor wearing an apron, along with an apparition being seen, footsteps ascending and descending the tower stairs, and giggling has also been heard. Yeah, you hear giggling and there's cold spots, therefore haunted, for sure haunted. And the smell of burnt tobacco has also been wafting through the air many a times. Lighthouses are pretty stressful, more than fair. When paranormal investigators, specifically the Southeast Michigan Paranormal Society team, when they had a 2-day intensive investigation after their search, they concluded that they believe that there is every reason for the lighthouse to be haunted. The investigators did some electric voice phenomenon work in the living room, and then they heard loud thuds from overheard. Like, where did they get this gear from, Like, I want this gear. I have some questions of myself going on in the apartment. I want to swing it around a bit. A sound of something scraping along the floor as well, and additionally, during their investigation, the rocking chair had moved 2 feet and was still moving. Just love to keep rocking around. We love that. We love haunted rocking chairs. We love unexplainable forces. While they were upstairs, they also reported hearing heavy footsteps from another unknown source. So many ghosts, there's rocking chairs, people moving around, working in the basement. It doesn't sound like the afterlife is a peaceful one, if I'm being honest. Sounds like there's a lot of to do after you die. I'm not really looking forward to it. I thought I could just kind of float around in your paintings, but now it sounds like I'm gonna have to go and wear this. Wear my morning clothes, who knows?
In at number 5, we have Whispers Estate. The Whispers Estate was built around 1894, and between 1899 and 1901 is when Dr. George and Sarah White moved in. George was a successful physician and ran his practice from their home. The two adopted many orphaned children, and unfortunately several passed away in the house over the years. Some of the children they took in were troubled. Many of them passed away in the bedrooms and other areas of the home, and even some of Dr. White's patients have been said to have also that passed while in the home. Dr. White practiced in the home for over 25 years, so it's probable but unknown how many over the years had passed in the home. In the early 2000s, the home underwent renovations and a lot of bizarre activity began. Many claim that lights would flicker on and off, footsteps would be heard stomping around on the second floor, and as time went on, the activity escalated. To this day, people reserve time to come and experience all this paranormal activity, and are encouraged to write down any experiences they had while in the home, and these accounts are posted to the Whispers Estates official Facebook page. You can go through the page and find creepy photos people have taken that show demonic figures, ghost-like creatures, and even orbs. It's also pretty common for the guests to be scratched up by unseen fingernails or touched by an unseen hand. The estate earned the Whispers moniker after the numerous guests that experienced somebody whispering in their ear, somebody they couldn't see. Due to the amount of people who have passed at the home in its early days, it's like there are a number of different spirits that haunt the estate to this day. The Whispers Estate is known as the 4th most haunted house in the United States, but many who have visited believe it to be the most haunted house in the entire country. In at number 4 we have Rhodes Hotel. The Rhodes Hotel was established in 1893 and was named after the first owners, Clara and Newton Rhodes. The youngest child in the Rhodes family, Everett, passed in one of the second-story bedrooms after contracting tuberculosis at 18 years old. Soon after their daughter's death, Newton unfortunately died, and it's believed he had died inside of the house. After Newton's passing, Clara turned the house into a dual brothel and speakeasy. It's said that one of the ladies of the night, Sarah, still haunts her bedroom tucked behind the stairs on the second floor. After Clara's death, the family home was opened as a hotel in the late 1800s and was meant to house those flocking to East Central Indiana during the natural gas boom. It's even believed that John Dillinger and Al Capone stopped at the hotel for a stay after hitching a ride on a train to Indiana. Not only did the family pass in their home, but a preacher by the name of Lester Poor supposedly hanged himself in the attic during the time when the home was converted to a hotel. But many believe his death could have been a murder. Due to the hotel's rich history, many locals and visitors have experienced paranormal activity, and everyone in the town knew that many spirits that passed in the building still haunt it to this day. The hotel closed its doors in 1937 and the property remained in the Rhodes family hands but sat empty for more than 30 years. The hotel and its contents were eventually auctioned off and it landed on the National Register of Historic Places, and the hotel saw 3 owners before the Haleys took it over for restoration. The Rhodes Hotel was purchased by Clint and Linda Haley in 1995, and they heard rumors about the haunting of the hotel, but this didn't faze them. They were more worried about the work they'd have to do to restore the home. The Haleys claim that they didn't encounter any paranormal activity, but many find that hard to believe. The hotel was up for sale again in 2017 when a man by the name of Couch took it over for his charity. Couch had launched the Lost Limbs Foundation 4 years earlier, which raised funds for prosthetic limbs for children. To this day, Couch's charity has owned and run the hotel. Not only had it been named among Indiana's most haunted places, but the hotel is consistently booked for private and paranormal investigations. The overnight investigation tickets can get up to $200, and this hotel attracts people from across the country. There have been many investigators that believe there is extensive activity in this old hotel, and people have captured a figure-like shadow moving across the living room curtains with the use of night vision cameras. Most commonly, people hear whispers and the second floor creaking when no one is inside. Unlike the Haleys, Couch said he's seen and heard supernatural happenings in the hotel since moving onto the property in 2017. He's heard footsteps on the staircase, the property camera has turned off randomly, and picked up voices before the footage flickers back on. Once, while hosting an investigation, Couch said he witnessed one of many Victorian dolls left behind from a previous owner jump off of its chair. In at number 3 we have Avon Bridge. The Avon Bridge is known to be haunted by almost every local living in the area. It is a massive trip-arch railroad trestle spinning a rural road over White Lick Creek. The bridge is a fascinating landmark in Hendricks County with lots of legends and history surrounding it, some more sinister than others. There are a few historical facts about the bridge that we do know. It was built in 1906 off County Road 625, was designed by W.M. Dunn, and is still used today. Many haunted stories surround this bridge and the area surrounding it. One story claims that a mother had been walking on the tracks and fell to her death. The mother's wailing could be heard when you drive under the bridge. It's common for many locals to honk honk when driving under the bridge in an effort to muffle her screams. Another story is that a drunk rail worker slipped during construction and was buried alive in the wet cement. The tale is that when a train goes over the bridge, people claim to still hear his moaning. Many locals say that if you go near the bridge at night, you will hear moaning and can see a ghostly figure of a ghost, or even 2 or 3 at a time. If you're traveling near the bridge on a hot summer day, you may be witness to the ghost's tears streaming down the concrete. Many people don't even refer to it as the Avon Bridge. It's often called the Haunted Avon Bridge because of the number of accounts of ghost sightings and constant sounds of the moans and screams heard from the ghosts that haunt the bridge. In at number 2, we have James Allison Mansion. The James Allison Mansion was built for James Allison, and it was a dream home, done in a grand design and style that exhibited James's wealth and importance. James was an important figure in the auto and plane industry, greatly helping in the development of cars and airplanes. He founded the Presto Light Company, which produced the first efficient headlight for early automobiles, and was a founding partner in Carl Fisher's Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He also started Allison Engineering Company, which evolved and transformed into an aircraft engine make known today as the Allison division of Rolls-Royce. James purchased the 65-acre estate, and he and his wife Sarah built this glorious mansion, starting construction in 1911 and finishing in 1913. The massive home had an elevator, billiard room, an indoor pool in the basement, a breakfast room, a library, a grand kitchen, and even pumped-in ice water. 15 years after the Allisons built their forever home, James then fell in love with his secretary, and he divorced his wife Sarah in 1928. Only a month later, James married this former employee, Lucille Musset. However, James contracted a fatal case of pneumonia and died shortly after marrying his second wife at the age of 56. In 1936, the estate went up for sale, and that same year it was bought by Sisters of St. Francis of Oldenburg. The former Allison home became a home for the college's library, administrative offices, classrooms, and sleeping quarters for the sisters. There have been many things seen and heard throughout the years since it became a college. There was a girl who had drowned in the pool in the basement, and James's untimely death in the home. Both people could be haunting this mansion to this day. It's said that people who pass through a sudden accident or a bout of illness, sometimes their spirits hang around, perhaps unaware that they have died or not wanting to accept their deaths. And this is the case for both the little girl and James. The entity of a little girl is often seen throughout the mansion. There are strange cries that are heard from the basement, in the attic, and objects seem to move by themselves and can completely disappear. There is another entity seen and could possibly be more than one, and they like to take keys and objects and move them to odd places. The library in particular is often completely rearranged, like the books and furniture. And finally, in at number 1, we have French Lick Springs Hotel. Nestled in the small resort town of French Lick sits the massive French Lick Springs Hotel. This legendary hotel was constructed in 1845 and is a crown jewel of the southern Indiana town. But there's more to this resort than meets the eye. This Indiana hotel is known to be one of the most haunted places in the state. Thomas Taggart was a mayor at the time and purchased the hotel in 1888. After purchasing the hotel, he added luxurious furnishings, marble floors, and built 2 championship golf courses. During this time, Taggart became the Democratic National Chairman, and the hotel became the unofficial headquarters of the Democratic National Party. In 1931, Franklin Roosevelt visited the hotel because of its Democratic standing and won the presidency a mere year later. Over the years, the hotel and the work Taggart put into it made it one of the most prominent hotels in the area, and even ran the West Baden Springs Hotel out of the business. Unfortunately, in 1916, Taggart passed away, but according to local legend, his spirit has never left the building. Taggart died in 1916, but that hasn't stopped rumors of sightings of this famous hotel owner. Guests and employees frequently encounter strange and paranormal activity throughout the hotel, and they believe it is caused by Taggart himself. Many spot his ghostly figure near the service elevator and can pick up a strong scent of pipe tobacco. Others claim they witnessed his spirit riding down the hallway on a horse and making noise inside the ballroom. Some hear noises and others encounter his ghost, though usually both don't occur at the same time. Not only is Taggart's ghost living in the hotel, but there are also rumors of a former bellhop that lingers around the hotel. Many believe that he was a current employee until they saw old photos of him hanging on the wall, or were told no bellhops were on duty when people had encountered him. Employees and guests say that it's pretty hard not to encounter some sort of activity when you're in the hotel, and due to the vast amount of paranormal sightings are why it's considered by many to be the most haunted place in Indiana and one of the most haunted places in all of the United States.
Number 5 on this list is Point Pleasant. Now, I feel like most of you have probably heard of this one before, but Mothman. Wikipedia says, in West Virginia folklore, the Mothman is a humanoid creature reportedly seen in the Point Pleasant area from November 15, 1966 to December 15, 1967. The first newspaper report was published in the Point Pleasant Register, dated November 16, 1966, titled, "Couple See Man-Sized Bird, Creature, Something." The national press soon picked up the reports and helped spread the story across the United States. Since that first sighting, Mothman has been seen hundreds of times over. And let me just be clear that this isn't something that you want to run into. Cryptid Wiki says, Mothman is described as a bipedal, winged humanoid. Despite his name, which was given to him by newspapers, he is in no way moth-like and has an appearance more like that of a large humanoid owl. His coloration varies from black, gray, to even brown, although it's usually the darker shades. He's often reported to be about 7 feet tall, with a wingspan of about 10 to 15 feet or more, plus the ability to fly over 100 miles per hour. Anyone who gets a close look at the Mothman seems to suffer from extreme fear and psychological distress, sometimes lasting for months or years afterwards. In particular, people say that a sense of pure evil overcomes them when they see Mothman's eyes. Just because people have seen this thing before and lived to tell about it doesn't mean that you will too. I bet there are tons of people who have seen it and then that's it, game over. Going to Point Pleasant runs the real risk that you might disappear. Number 4 on this list is the West Virginia Penitentiary. This is one of the most haunted prisons in the United States, and it's for good reason. Now, not only is this prison deeply haunted right now, but you might run the very risk of disappearing if you were to go there. I should also note that when it was functional and operating as a prison, a lot of inmates would actually disappear as well. Over 1,000 men died at this prison. This is a large reason why it's haunted to this day. They died from hanging, from riots, from taking their own life. This prison saw tons of atrocities, and it was a horrible place while it was operating, and is still a horrible place even now that it's shut down. One of the reasons this prison was destined for failure is because they decided to build the damn thing on some ancient burial grounds. I don't know how many times we need to go over this, but guys, let's stop building stuff on burial grounds. Seriously, like, it's not cool to those people, and it's also just not gonna make for a good place. I can literally guarantee it. All the death that has happened on this place has left its mark. The Travel Channel says, though the prisoners are gone, they're not forgotten, and by many accounts, the ghosts of some of the 998 men who died here still roam free. There's a shadow man that has been seen and even photographed. Staff of the prison have been accosted by unseen forces. Strange noises still echo throughout the cell blocks, and something dark lurks in the bowels of the building. Stay away from this prison at all costs, folks. Number 3 on this list is Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. This has made our list before when it comes to haunted and abandoned amusement parks. What was supposed to be an area of fun and joy is now just a scary place where you might just get taken. Wide Open Country says, when Conley Snitto first showed up with the dreams of building a carnival back in the 1920s, he had no idea about the bloody history of the land itself. It all started in the late 1700s when Mitchell Clay and his family were the first to settle in Mercer County. Mitchell and his wife Phoebe had 14 children together and settled on their 800-acre farm. Tragedy struck the first time when members of the local Shawnee Native American tribe two of the Clay children, Bartley and Tabitha, while they were working on their daily chores. After Mitchell killed some of the Native Americans in retaliation, the Clay family and their property would never be the same. Fast forward to the 20s when Conley Snitto is working on his park with no knowledge that it's actually a burial ground. He funded the Ferris wheel swing rides, a dance hall, and even a swimming pool. But the haunted history of the area started to catch up with the park, and strange things began happening. A young girl passed away while riding the swings, and a little boy drowned in addition to 4 other deaths. By the 60s, the park became an abandoned place that seemed doomed. In the 80s, Gaylord White purchased the property in hopes of building new neighborhoods. But after they started getting into the land, they realized that there was more buried than just the Clay family. It was an ancient Native American burial ground that experts believe long predates the Clays, as well as Native American artifacts. White decided not to mess with that kind of history and allowed the amusement park to rust over, now looking as haunted as its past. Needless to say, this park has had quite the history around it, and now it is a hotspot for everything paranormal. If you want to disappear, then there might not be a better spot in the country to go to than Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. Number 2 on this list is the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. One of the scariest and most haunted asylums in the world here, guys. West Virginia Tourism says, located in Weston, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum was a sanctuary for the mentally ill up until 1994. This National Historic Landmark was once an important military post in the Civil War. It was originally built to hold about 250 patients, but during its peak it held 2,400 patients in poor conditions. Ghost experts have flocked here to experience the paranormal for themselves. They've heard blood-curdling screams and seen mysterious shadowy figures. Many say the souls of the insane have never left the halls they once called home. These shadow figures are dangerous too, folks. People have been attacked here and it's been pretty bad. The spirits that live here, there really is nothing human about them anymore. All humanity has left these creatures and now they resemble more of a Dementor from Harry Potter than anything even remotely from this planet. If you go to this asylum, then your disappearance is a very real possibility. And trust me, having one of these things take you, it wouldn't be a good time for anyone. And finally, number 1 on this list is Braxton County. It feels weird just blocking off an entire county, but if you're trying to stay safe and not disappear on us, then you might have to do that. West Virginia Tourism says, on one fall night in 1952, a UFO fell from the sky and landed here in West Virginia. What happened next has been highly contradicted. A group of local children and neighbors went to where the UFO fell and found a mysterious being, with shiny eyes and a round red face, cloaked in a green drape-like material. The later dubbed Flatwoods Monster hissed at the group and disappeared. The witnesses also reported a pungent smell that made them feel nauseous. The following day, when investigators inspected the site, they found skid marks and an odd gummy deposit, but no strange smell. So for all we know, there is still some alien creature just running around these parks and doing whatever it wants. That's really not a reassuring thought here, folks, and not something that I think that we should be okay with. Like, I feel as if this kind of needs to be addressed by the American government or something like that. I guess it's possible that they have conducted an operation to catch this thing and we just don't know about it. Either way, until we have definitive proof that this thing is gone for good, I'd avoid Braxton County altogether. Number 5 on this list is Cleveland Gray's Armory Museum. This building was constructed in 1893 for the Cleveland Grays, who were a volunteer private military company. The group helped law enforcement and dealt with other criminal ongoings that attacked the city's streets. They continued helping out the military for as long as the government would allow them to, but after World War I were no longer allowed to enter as a private group. However, they obviously had a lot of weapons and things of that nature that nobody would be using anymore. So today, there now stands the Cleveland Grays Armory Museum. These guns and cannons don't stand alone though, as there are ghosts living among these walls as well. Disembodied voices and things moving when they're not supposed to are all very common occurrences at the Cleveland Grays Armory Museum. The legend actually became so famous that this place was featured on Ghost Hunters, where they investigated the building and determined that this place is in fact haunted. However, luckily for us, and a reason why you still might be able to go to this place, is that the ghosts are supposedly out there for a good time. These professionals determine that the ghosts are not fueled by anger, but just chilling out in the museum and living their best ghostly lives. Still though, there are many apparitions of military men who will appear, as well as ghostly footsteps and sounds that just don't make any sense at all. It's all very creepy, even if the ghosts are only out for fun. It would probably be a pretty cool place to check out, just make sure that you aren't faint of heart. Number 4 on this list is Erie Street Cemetery. This is apparently one of the spookiest places in the state and not a spot that you should want to be burying your loved ones. Only in your state writes, in 1826, this charming cemetery was established on East 9th Street, though it was known as Erie Street at the time. Before then, a community burial ground was maintained near modern-day Public Square. Expansion, of course, eventually caught up with the cemetery, and it's now right across the street from Progressive Field. This growth once threatened the cemetery's existence as bodies were removed from the cemetery in the early 1900s to make space for the new development. This preparation was shut down when the Pioneers Memorial Association was founded, so the burial grounds remains, yet it now feels oddly out of place. Perhaps one of the most unforgettable stories is that of Jock Ossaut, also known as Walking Bear. Jock Ossaut was the proud chief of the Meskwaki, a tribe that existed in Iowa. Following the conclusion of the Black Hawk War, Jock Ossaut came out east to hunt. He made the acquaintance of Dan Marble and joined his theater troupe, traveled to England, and even came into the favor of Queen Victoria. However, he fell ill and parted ways with the troupe. Legend maintains that Jock Ossaut was making his way home to his ancestral lands, anticipating his demise, but that he passed in Cleveland before he reached his intended destination. As a result, local myth maintains Jock Ossaut remains eternally restless. His local friends like Dr. Horace Ackley arranged for his burial in Erie Street Cemetery. His dismay at being unable to return home caused him to crack his stone grave marker. This ghost has been spotted so many times and haunts those who pass by here. He's even said to haunt the Cleveland Guardians baseball park, which is just across the street from this cemetery. His ghost is forever restless and just wants to get home, but I'm not sure that he ever will though. Number 3 on this list is South Bass Island Lighthouse. Located in South Bass Island on Lake Erie, this lighthouse and the island it's on is honestly rather beautiful. Super cute and super quaint, it's kind of like the place that you'd want to go for a day trip with your significant other. However, you may not want to take said significant other to the South Bass Lighthouse itself. It housed lighthouse keepers in the late 1800s. The weirdness began back in 1898 with Harry Riley, the lighthouse keeper, and his assistant Sam Anderson. Anderson was a bit of a weirdo. He was said to have captured snakes on the island and then bring them to the basement of the lighthouse, where he kept a bunch of them. Anderson apparently lost his mind though during the time that he worked at this place. Apparently there was a small epidemic and he freaked out at the prospect of having to stay in quarantine. Triggering a little bit? It's thought that he took his own life by jumping off of the cliff portion of the island. Then later on, the lighthouse keeper Harry was found hopelessly mad running around the island like a lunatic. It was the two stories of these men that launched the legends of a haunting at this lighthouse. People are very scared of the lighthouse as they believe it to be haunted with some sort of demon that will make you go insane. A lovely and quaint little spot, but one that if you spend too much time at will literally have you lose your mind. Not to mention the ghosts of these two men have been spotted from time to time running around frantically, looking as if all their wits are totally gone. Number 2 on this list is Edwin Shaw Hospital. Edwin Shaw Hospital has truly seen it all, and it's no wonder that it's deeply haunted today. It initially opened in 1915 as a hospital specifically for tuberculosis. Then a few years later, a side wing opened up to care for pediatric patients. Needless to say, during these periods there was a lot of death that took place. Then in 1947, things changed drastically and became a place for abandoned children, those who lost their parents, or those who suffered. For the next few years of this place's operation, there were a decent amount of scandals that took place. Tons of reports of mistreatment of these children, with some patients even taking their own lives during this time. Eventually this became a psychiatric hospital as well, and as you can probably imagine, it saw its fair share of human rights violations and scary things. Now, this place is no more, it's completely demolished, but the area is still deeply haunted. Ohio Exploration went prior to its demolition in 2017 and saw its haunted nature firsthand. They write, "Of course, with such a rich and diverse history, it is no surprise that Edwin Shaw was said to be haunted. The spirits of not only the tuberculosis victims, there are 246 buried in the hospital cemetery, but also of those children who took their own lives and those who fell victim to ill fates were said to haunt the hospital and its grounds. Doors opened and closed by themselves, and sounds of spectral footsteps were often heard in the halls. The sounds of a meal being served in the mess hall were heard quite frequently, but upon inspection, the hall was completely empty. Ghostly humming and other odd sounds were heard in Sunshine Village, where the bulk of the paranormal activity was said to take place. Be very careful, guys, of this place in Ohio." Number 1 on this list is Moonville Tunnel. Moonville Tunnel is a deeply haunted tunnel in Ohio that locals are perpetually afraid of. Jim Reed says, according to local legend, the ghost is that of a railroad worker who was crushed by an oncoming train in the spring of 1859. The newspaper article from the MacArthur Democrat dated March 31st, 1859 reads, a brakesman was fatally injured when the wheels passing over and grinding to a shapeless mass the greater part of one of his legs. Talk about graphic. Most who claim to have sighted the ghost in Moonville Tunnel say that he carries a lantern and is sometimes seen as a hovering orb of light. At least 4 other people were reported to have been killed at Moonville Tunnel as well, although the details, they kind of vary. Some legends claim that Moonville was struck by a plague and quarantine, and that the ghosts are of those killed by the epidemic. Others state that the ghost is that of a pregnant woman struck by a train, and still others claim that it was an 8-foot tall man who was struck. However, none of these legends are quite as popular as the initial one. This tunnel appears on tons of the most haunted Ohio lists, and it even has a pretty massive section on Wikipedia dedicated to how haunted it is. That can't be said for most other places, and just kind of leads to the legitimacy of these ghosts. On the Wikipedia page, there are also extensive stories about the Lavender Lady, the Engineer, and the Bully, who were all apparently characters that died due to this train many years ago. As Jim Reed mentioned earlier though, these are lesser legends, but still could have actually happened. Whatever or whoever is truly haunting this tunnel, it's clear that it probably isn't safe for us to be exploring. Avoid the Moonville Tunnel at all costs. Unless you're in a train, in that case, because considering how our ghosts became ghosts, you might actually be safe.
Coming in at number 5, we have William A. Irvin. During the fall season, the ship has haunted tours with actors, but the ship really is haunted. The haunted ship began in Duluth in 1992. Before the haunted ship started, the William A. Irvin was open for regular boat tours during the month of October. Historically, this month was really slow, and the DECC needed a way to generate more revenue during this quiet month. Having heard about a failed attempt by Cleveland's William G. Mather trying to become a haunted ship, the DECC decided to try their own hands at a haunted attraction. The William A. Irvin partnered up with UMD to give the school's drama department some experience on production and acting. Needless to say, their attempt was a huge success. More than 2 decades later, the haunted ship is the peak of the Irvin's yearly business. The most common sighting that employees relate is that a lady in white has been seen walking around the ship, noticeably. She is usually up on deck and is dressed in period clothing. Nobody has ever been able to identify who she is or why she is tied to the vessel. There is also said to be a former captain who is still overseeing his ship. He is most often seen in the captain's chair and is said to be angry that the ship remains in dock and is no longer seaworthy. There are another 2 men haunting the ship. One sticks to the front of the ship and apparently does not understand what has happened to him, while the other sticks to the rear of the ship and has confirmed that he died after falling from a ladder. The family of the second man has come forward and said the story surrounding his death was always suspicious and they were denied a claim to his pension. In at number 4, we have Enger Tower. The 82-year-old watchtower can be found right in the middle of Enger Park. The tower was built in 1939 and looks over the Duluth Harbor, being known as one of the most well-known haunted places in Minnesota, and for good reason. The tower is 531 feet above Lake Superior and is built of bluestone from local sources. Enger Tower was first dedicated by Crown Prince Olav and Crown Princess Martha of Norway on June 15th. It was built as a tribute to businessman Bert Enger, who passed away in 1931. The dedication was in honor of Bert Enger, a native of Norway who came to this country and became a successful furniture dealer. At the time of his death, Mr. Enger donated 2/3 of his estate to the city of Duluth. This included the land known as Enger Hill, which along with Enger Tower is also the home of Enger Park and Enger Golf Course. The tower can be seen almost anywhere throughout the city and has since been restored. There is a local legend that a man took his own life in 1948 by jumping off the 5th level of Enger Tower. They say his body has been found hours later but was never identified. That being said, there are numerous ghost stories of visitors seeing a man on the 5th floor of the tower before entering, but when they reach the top, he is gone. Coming in at number 3, we have Van Dusen Mansion. In 1892, Great In 1892, grain baron George Van Dusen built a monumental mansion for his family. With 12,000 square feet, 10 fireplaces, a turret, and a $45,000 price tag, the home was a symbol of turn-of-the-century prosperity. After 2 generations of Van Dusens moved out in 1937, the building had been used to house almost everything except a family since, being used as a school, training medical facility, and even a college throughout the years. It was vacant in the late 1930s and spent 20 years as the College of Commerce. It was home to Hamline University Law School, then the Horst International Education Center. In the late 1980s, the castle fell on hard times and became little more than a flophouse. By the early 90s, it was headed for the wrecking ball. 2 weeks before it was scheduled to be demolished, it was rescued by Wisconsin entrepreneur Bob Poling, who bought it for $237,000. Now a venue to hold fairy tale-esque weddings, the Van Dusen mansion has had its fair share of past lives. In at number 2 we have Mounds Theatre. The renovated theatre and 86-year-old movie house can be found in Minnesota. The old theatres have been rumoured for the past several years to be a home of community of creepy ghosts. One story goes as the Mounds was built in 1922 and operated as a movie house until 1967, when it closed so abruptly that when volunteers arrived many years later to renovate the place, they found popcorn on the floor. The subject of paranormal TV shows and professional ghost hunting investigations, the theatre is allegedly haunted by a trio of ghosts: a happy little girl who bounces a ball on stage, a cursed old man who lurks in the shadowy corners of the projection booth, and a crestfallen usher who walks up and down the aisles in search of his lost love. The ghosts in the theatres are so active that the owner had a party of 4 Ghostbusters in a projection room sit in one dark and stormy October night. The dim light was extinguished and the room grew chilled. The owner stated that as the 4 sat silently awaiting their fate, shivering in the dark, and all at once there was the sound of a man crying. When investigating the sounds of the crying man, they found a shadow figure in the corner of the room. The figure reported having black glittering eyes and an aura of anger. Because of the odd ghost encounter and negative energy, they had to abruptly end the ghost investigation before it was too late. Another former owner who reopened the theatre in 2001 claims that the spirits of the theatre have gotten physical and grabbed them while they were working late at night. Some paranormal investigators have left with claw marks on their backs, but the scariest ghost of them all is considered the young girl. This is the theatre's most notorious ghost and is seen in a pink dress, often bouncing a ball on the stage. And finally, in at number 1 we have Anoka State Hospital. Located in Anoka town is the Anoka State Hospital, which is arguably the most haunted place in Minnesota. The Anoka Hospital was the first state asylum for individuals that were deemed insane. The building was established in 1898 and opened in 1900 to admit patients from other state asylums that had become too crowded. The first 100 patients were males from St. Peter's State Hospital and were considered to be chronic incurables, men who had lost their minds due to heredity, causes, or environment. In 1906, 115 women were also transferred to the asylum from St. Peter's State Hospital. Residents were not to receive any type of treatment at this asylum, as this was the final stop for them until they passed away. And passed they did. A total of 86 of the original patients were buried in numbered graves in the asylum cemetery. The original name of the institution was Anoka State Asylum, but in an attempt to soften the image, they changed its name in 1937 to the Anoka State Hospital. Although the name was kinder and gentler, treatment at the facility was not. Patients were subjected to medical experiments and suffered both mental and physical harm. The original hospital complex closed in 1999 and residents were transferred to a new facility located close by. The buildings and property were then given to Anoka County to use for offices and to house the county workhouse. The remainder of the buildings were closed and boarded up. With such a terrifying past, it is no wonder that the Anoka State Hospital has been rumored to house the spirits of past patients. Former employees have reported that while unusual occurrences happen throughout the buildings, the most paranormal activities are linked to the tunnels located below the buildings. These tunnels were used as a way of transferring patients from one building to another without risking escape. Ironically, many patients believed these tunnels would lead them to freedom, and so they tried to escape by going down into them, but after a few twists and turns, escapees realized that the tunnels were more of a maze than an escape route. Without an understanding of where each tunnel went and how they joined together, it was easy to get hopelessly lost in them. Several Several escapees became so disorientated and distraught that they took the only way out that they felt was left to them and ended their lives. For years, employees would report hearing footsteps trudging through the tunnels, stopping, pausing. There was also reports of whispering and low voices in conversation, but the words were not understood. The paranormal activities became so rampant that most employees refused to use the tunnels because they were just too eerie. Today, only maintenance and security are allowed in them. Today, the county owns the buildings that made up the former insane asylum complex. Although the complex was eligible for the National Register of Historic Places, it appears that time has passed. The current buildings are in a state of extreme disrepair.